Good evening. We're just about to start the meeting, so hopefully everybody's managed to grab some refreshments, which are in the function room just over here. My name's Hannah Bodley, and I'm a member of the management team of the Parks Trust. I'm just going to say a few words about what will be happening this evening, and then pass you over to our speakers for this evening. So we're delighted to welcome you all tonight to our annual public meeting, both those that are here in person and also those of you that are watching via our live stream. And it's a special one for us this year as we celebrate the Trust turning 30 years old. Our birthday is actually on the 10th of July, which falls handily on a Sunday this year, and we will be hosting a tea party at Milton Keynes Rose, which is at the top of Campbell Park, nearest to the shopping centre. The event's free to attend, and it would be lovely to see you all there. It's also a very special year for us this year because our Chief Executive, David Foster, is retiring after an outstanding 19 years. And we welcome our new Chief Executive, Victoria Miles. You'll hear from advertising later on before it airs next week, so you'll be able to see a sneak preview. And we will take questions towards the end of the meeting. Thanks to those that already sent them in, we will be answering some of those, and then we will go live to the audience. We have a number of our team of experts on hand this evening to answer your questions. And after the meeting, we also have a reception where we will be raising a toast to our 30 years. So, to start off proceedings this evening, I'm very pleased to introduce our special guest speaker. Our speaker is someone that we work with very closely, and she does remarkable things for the local community. Please welcome the High Sheriff of Buckinghamshire, Debbie Brock.
Thank you, Hannah, and for the very warm welcome. Lord Lieutenant, Madam Mayor, distinguished guests. It's my very great privilege to have been asked to speak about David this evening. David's leadership of the Parks Trust has forever shaped the new city of Milton Keynes, very much for the better. The Parks Trust is custodian to 6,000 acres of parks, 9 lakes, waterways, nature walks, ancient woods, and it was awarded the Green Flag in 2021 for the 4th time. The Trust was a bold proposal when it was first introduced. Whilst not quite unique, it's certainly a very rare model. The concept of having a charity endowed with money charged with looking after many of the green spaces in the city, rather than the council and free of the vagaries of budgets. On paper, it's a sensible offer. However, it needs leadership, vision, drive, commitment, and enthusiasm for this to happen. David built on the foundations of those before him, not just in but working to ensure they were used and enjoyed, that nature flourished, and most importantly, maintaining the trust on a stable financial footing, growing the endowment first given, and being entrepreneurial in the way the trust operated, investing and developing across the country so the profits can be used to maintain the parks in MK. That is truly innovative. Bringing the farming operation in-house, and building a unique model for farming, using livestock to maintain the parks, has been a wise, sensible, and an environmentally sustainable way of looking after the parks. How many cities have sheep grazing within a few hundred metres of their shopping centre or theatre? Volunteers play a huge role throughout. The work constantly evolves to make sure that the Parks Trust are the continued custodians of the new green areas that come as the city grows. And David, through so many channels, has been championing and pushing for this to continue. But his leadership does not stop there. He was a major team player in the Football World Cup bid over a decade ago, in delivering a successful Rugby World Cup 6 years ago. And there's also a fund at the Community Foundation. The Lieutenancy approached David to support Her Majesty the Queen's Platinum Jubilee tree planting, and David put forward the Wood Meadow at Middleton. He's worked quietly and consistently on behalf of Milton Keynes, forged partnerships, and enabled his team to deliver many joint proposals. His tenure has shaped our city green spaces and parks as places for people to enjoy and have fun. Our rich and diverse community make full use of the green spaces. He's been a driving force to see this happen. More than that, our parks play host to an array of large outdoor participative events. Play Day, Islamic Arts Weekend, the International Festival, to name but a few. India Days coming weekend, Windrush cricket matches, I could go on. I can also remember David cycling around Campbell Park with various dignitaries over the years. Whilst there are many schemes that David's been involved in his time at the Trust, £3 million from the National Lottery to conserve and restore Linford Wood Manor Park is a pretty impressive one. The ethos of continuing to push for better spaces for the residents of Milton Keynes is something that this whole city can thank the Trust and David for. My direct experience of David, however, is as someone of unwavering support throughout the Milton Keynes Rose project. David was in his office when Marie Kirbyshaw and I visited, with ideas for the civic space so lacking then in Milton Keynes. This must have been about during 2010. David took out a rolled up plan featuring ideas to transform the old fountain at the top of Campbell Park. It could no longer be maintained, and so plans were afoot to replace it. This was an inspired choice on his part. The pond and park had been designed over a ley line, with the layout created so that the sun shines directly across the park from the highest point in town, the Belvedere, and then down Midsummer Boulevard to the railway station, where the sun rises at the summer solstice. This makes the location an energy centre of Milton Keynes by the marriage of careful city planning and natural phenomenon. The Rose is loved by photographers and the subject of amazing photography. It must surely be one of the most photographic locations in Milton Keynes and is fast becoming an iconic place in MK. Many factors engaging and relevant public artwork that is a calendar of memories important to the people of Milton Keynes. It serves to educate in the world. David had the vision and conviction to fully commit to the proposal from Gordon Young, and just as his leadership has encouraged diversity into the parks, so does the Rose enable it too. It pays homage to Christianity's rose windows, Hindu and Muslim mandalas, Islamic art, and the beautiful shapes found in nature. It was an imaginative funding package that David and the wider team created, and that finally saw the Rose commissioned. Bryony very much representing David right through the commission, construction, and beyond. David was also very clear. In picking the mix of calendar dates, we needed criteria to ensure consistency in judging nominations for pillar engravings. He drew up the original criteria, and they've hardly been altered in the intervening time. Just this year, 2 important dates have been added to the calendar of inscriptions. Last night saw the visit of the Jamaican High Commissioner and the Lord Lieutenant and Mayor on one of their many visits to the Rose for the unveiling of a pillar dedicated to the Windrush generation. David's commitment to the Milton Keynes Rose has continued through support of the now Milton Keynes Rose Trust. Our hugely committed trustees and project team, we thank him for the support of Bryony, Hannah, Julie and Martin, in particular as a place to meet here and plan, and this enables many wonderful events to take place. David, it's been a pleasure for both Pete and I to work with you and so many others over the past decade and more. You've led the Trust impeccably. You've provided first-class parks for Milton Keynes without costing the taxpayer a penny. You've enhanced the environment and you've made many friends. You leave a lasting legacy for the city, which will be appreciated for many years to come. On behalf of all the residents of the city and the county, can I say thank you for all you've done.
Thank you very much, Deb. And we'd now like to welcome up Zoe Raven, our chair.
Thank you, Hannah. And you'll be pleased to know my talk is very, very short because I'm here to represent the trustees. I'm the chair of the trustee board. And as you're probably already aware, the board is a We're also there to scrutinise what they do without interfering, and that's a balancing act. We're also there to provide stewardship for the long-term future of the trust. So we have to safeguard the resources of the trust. But at the same time, we want the trust to be innovative, to respond to the changing environment and the changing challenges. So we have to get that balance right too. Our role is very much strategic, not operational, and we have to stop ourselves digging in too deep sometimes and interfering. That's a balancing act as well. And it's been a real pleasure to work with David and the team and my board of trustees over the last few years. We're very lucky that we have a really fabulous board of trustees with great diversity of thought. We're always trying to improve its diversity, but it's diversity of thought and approach that matters the most, and we work very hard to achieve that. We have governance reviews very regularly to make sure that we're doing the right job in terms of the way we support the trust and its team. But the real work of the team is not done by us. It is done by David, the executive team, and by all the employees at the trust. And of course, the volunteers that put in the elbow work and the grease of getting lots of jobs done. It's a fabulous organisation. As it's been said already, it's just phenomenal that we've got this in Milton Keynes because most cities don't have anything like it. So it is a real privilege. It's been a very personal privilege and pleasure to work with David over the last few years, and I'm sure everybody's got lots of thoughts and words for David as he says goodbye to us, but it's been very inspiring to see the way David works as a leader. And as trustees, we get to see that firsthand, not just in the way he works with the board and he welcomes feedback, he welcomes challenge. We don't always agree on everything, David and I, but we always find a solution because the whole board is motivated by the same desire to do the best for the trust, which means doing the best for the people of Milton Keynes. There's another balancing act there because what's best for people and their desire to walk dogs and play games and have events in the parks isn't always the very best thing for maintaining biodiversity and safeguarding all the eco parts of the trust's green landscapes and lakes. So that's a balancing act as well, but it's one that David has steered impeccably over the last few years. And he always manages to find a solution, which is, as I say, it's inspiring, but it's been a real privilege to see the way he leads the team and manages to keep everybody engaged and the way he develops his team. So the people that you meet tonight, the senior leadership team, the experts that we have giving answers to questions is a real tribute to them, but also to David. I think it's also a tribute to David, the fact that we're here in this tent this evening, because we're not under any obligation to have a public AGM. We could just publish the report and that's it. But having this event on, and we've been doing it for the last few years, I think it's a testament to the fact that we have confidence that we are doing the right thing because we're prepared to stand up and explain decisions that might not always seem like the best decisions from individual perspectives, because we can't please everybody. We do try, but we can't please everybody, and we have the long-term future of the trust at our heart to consider mostly. As you know, David's leaving us, which is a sad event, but it's also a celebration because of what he's managed to achieve over such a long period of time. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce you to Victoria shortly, because Victoria has been appointed as our new Chief Executive. I'm not going to say anything more about it because she's going to do that herself. But what we've been very fortunate to have is a really good handover period between David and Victoria. The last few weeks they've been working together to make sure that she can hit the ground running when David goes off on all his leisure activities that he's got planned and lined up, I'm sure. And finally, I'd like to finish by recognising the fact that we also have 3 members of the team leaving us after the whole 30 years. So they've been with the Trust since the beginning. So we have Rob Reek, who unfortunately isn't here today, and Mark Colton, who unfortunately isn't here today, but Colin Savage is. But all 3 of them, we're going to be doing a presentation tomorrow for them. But I'd like to just recognise them as well as David, and I'd like you to give a special hand to David at the end of his tenure. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. And now I'd like to welcome up our Chief Executive, David Foster.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, everybody. I hardly recognise myself from all those descriptions. But it's lovely to see this marquee full, a bigger marquee than last year. So that's a really good sign, I think, and long may these public meetings continue. What do I need to respond to those first bits? Look, I'm really flattered. Thank you very much for all those kind words. It's very nice of you. As I say, I hardly recognise myself. I could take issue with some of those things, but I won't. My job this evening is to account to you for what the Trust has done this last year. And I'm going to do that and tell you what we said we would do and what we've actually done. And the two things are, fairly much the same, which is good. And then I will just reflect a bit on my 19 years here as well. So this time last year I stood up and told you that we were going to do, or try and do, 12 things in the last financial year. The first one, and this always comes first for me, is we're going to maintain the parks to a high standard. And I think by and large we are achieving that. I say I think because that's one of the things that I've never really satisfactorily addressed here is how do I convince the board and tell the board and show the board that what we are doing is actually a good standard. And there is very little, there's very little objective way of doing that. The Green Flag Award, which we're delighted to have won again for the whole few. So the board is forever having to take my say that actually the parks are pretty good and the maintenance is done to a good standard. We do ask the public what they think, and the public, what do they know? 7% of them agree that the parks are well maintained. So 97% is. It was 98%. So things are slipping, and it is. I moved on, I think. It's difficult to know. I think the parks are pretty well maintained. We could always do better. I drive around, walk around, cycle around, and I see things that aren't quite right. You'll all see them. Brian, where's Brian? You will have spotted them, I'm sure. But generally speaking, the parks are maintained to a good standard. And most importantly, I think it's not just the daily or even the annual maintenance that's important. It's doing the cyclical work, the stuff that you need to do. You need to thin bits of the woodlands every 5 or 10 years. You need to thin the plantations. You need to resurface the footpaths. And we've kept up with all that cyclical work. And that's important, as well as picking the litter and cutting the grass and the hedges and everything else. So this is all stuff has done and that they do year in, year out, rain or shine. And they've also had to cope with ash dieback, which is another additional lot of work for us. We have thousands of trees. I can't really... Oh, here's the screen. Look. Oh, yeah. Am I meant to be doing this, Hannah? You're doing it. Where's the ash dieback picture? There's the green flag. Here's the ash dieback picture. Now, that is one of our ancient woodlands, and you can see there, if you know what you're looking at, the dead ash trees, the grey ones there. So there's a heck of a lot of ash trees that we have in the city to deal with. I think I probably showed you this picture last year. Well, it's got worse, and there's more and more for us to deal with. And those trees, if they're near a footpath or near a road, they all need to be dismantled, just in the interest of public safety. So, yeah, some big challenges. There always will be challenges in this job, and that's one of the ones here at the moment. So what else did we say that we would do last year? Well, we said we wanted to build back our outdoor learning, our events and our volunteer programme, all of which had been badly hit by the pandemic, and we wanted to build them back to pre-pandemic levels. And we did that. Well, we did that and more. So in terms of our environmental education, we did 560 education sessions for all ages and all types of activities. I'm especially proud of this work. I don't know why. Every time I talk about it, I get quite emotional. But the environmental education work is very close to my heart. And this year we did some surveys of the kids and adults and even the teachers about our environmental education work and asked them to rate it. And it all got, on average, 4.8 out of 5. So we were really pleased with those results. And I think, you know, the work that we're doing in the outdoor learning team is second to none. Some of them organised direct by us, but more importantly, I think, lots of them organised by the local community groups and local organisations. And Julie with her team support those organisations, capacity building as they call it, and help them to organise the events. And those are the really precious events. Those are the ones that will really survive and stand the test of time, I think. Things like India Day that's coming up this weekend. So about 100,000 people attended our events last year, which was wonderful, from guided walks and play days to heritage experiences and festivals, festivals that celebrate the city's diversity particularly. So we're really proud of all those things. And in our volunteers, we had more than 6,000 hours of volunteers. You can see I'm quite keen on getting the numbers and getting the stats together. I'm not really, but the board drive me to do that. How much did we do? So we do collect all that, and we've got some really good systems now. So we know that the volunteers put in 6,000 hours last year, which is an amazing amount of work. 224 volunteers, and they're a crucial part in the achievement of our charitable objectives. And we thank them sincerely for all that they do. We're going to further strengthen our volunteer programme next year and hopefully submit it and get the Investors in Volunteer initiative. Our outdoor learning and our community engagement work and our events programme will all continue this year, helping to ensure that people have great experiences in the parks and have the chance to learn more about them and get involved. This is all part of our mission, which is to provide parks that are loved. That's what we're trying to get going here. We want people to really love and value and appreciate the parks and respect them. And we think we're on the right track. So we said a lot last year about biodiversity, and we set ourselves some pretty big targets for biodiversity. We've strengthened our biodiversity team, and we've made some really good progress on our biodiversity targets. We completed a full survey of all our hedgerows, which was quite some achievement. We now know how we're going to, I'm really passionate about hedgerows. We now know how we need to improve and increase the biodiversity of our hedgerows and thicken them up and strengthen them and create margins around them. And then last year we had a Marsh Warbler. I think every year I've managed to get in some special species that has arrived here. Well, the Marsh Warbler arrived at the Floodplain Forest Nature Reserve, which was not a nature reserve, it was a boring old bit of grassland in 2003, and is now a most wonderful nature reserve. And the Marsh Warbler obviously thinks so too. And this was the first known incidence of a Marsh Warbler nesting in Buckinghamshire. So, you know, another good indicator we're on the right track with some things. Don't get me wrong, nature is still under severe pressure here and everywhere else. So what we're doing is probably a drop in the ocean, but it all helps. And also really in biodiversity terms, we've done some great stuff there. Emily Darlington was here. Where is Emily? Is she still here? No, she said she had to go to a scrutiny committee. But we've done some really good stuff with the council on that, and we're going to continue supporting that initiative. So, deep breath. Financial. I've got to tell you about the financial stuff. I better have a drink. Which one's the gin? So financially, up pops a picture of Shenley Pavilions, one of our commercial properties. We had a good year financially. I'm really pleased to say our net asset, which is quite a good achievement, largely due to the growth in value of our property portfolio, but also bolstered by the endowments we received for taking on another 6 new pieces of parkland and play areas. Play areas come with a really good endowment. They have to, because you have to replace them just about every 10 years. So they're very expensive things for developers to build, but they're also pretty expensive for developers to hand over the endowment that we need in order to look after them and keep them in tip-top condition forever, because that is our commitment. We will keep them in tip-top condition forever. So we had 2.4 million of endowment, and our assets grew to 150 million. And those assets provide the bulk of our income every year. And this year our income from our assets reached a new height of £9.4 million. So this is a real testament, I think, to our in-house property team, which last year was led, well, and for quite a few years before, led by Ben Allett, who sadly left us at the end of the financial year. But we're really pleased to have Tim. Where's Tim? Tim. Oh, there's Tim at the back. We're really pleased to have Tim recruited at last into the trust. So, welcome, Tim. So our property portfolio is really important in terms of delivering the money that we need to spend on the parks. And of course, if we have a good year, we manage to persuade the board that we need to spend a little bit more. So last year we spent more than we've ever spent on our charitable activities. We spent £14.8 million, and this year we'll be spending a little bit more than that. So if we do well, we can expand our activities, and we've expanded our staff team quite considerably this year. We took on 3 enforcement officers. This is a nice picture of them meeting, 2 of them anyway, meeting and greeting. They're big guys, and we weren't sure how they would go down with the public, but they've really been welcomed by the public. The public like to see that presence in the park, and certainly in some of the hotspots where we have problems, and we do have a few problems in some areas, they have made a real difference, and we've been able to enforce the no alcohol ban at Willow Lake and the no barbecue ban at Willow Lake. We're not, the fun police, which is sometimes levelled at us, but we've managed to enforce those bans really successfully without any problem, and the family groups really appreciate it. And our parks now are they feel much safer, and they're much happier places to visit. Even on a busy bank holiday at Willow Lake, it's now a really happy, fun place to go, and there's no sort of sense of foreboding when you get to sort of dusk and you're trying to lock up. So they've made a really big difference. We've also increased the numbers in our direct works team. So we took on 10 new recruits in that team last year, and I'm really pleased that the council have supported us with this, and they're funding some of that expansion. And it's a really innovative training scheme we've got there. We couldn't make the government's apprenticeship scheme work, so we had to invent our own, and it works really, really well. And this year, a couple more people from our direct works team who've been on that team have now moved. A couple more have moved into the office to work on the management side. So it's a really good way of us training and developing our own people. And we've also recruited and they're both doing really, really well. And lastly, on our expansion of staff, we've recruited our first sustainability manager. So Dr. Paul Arnold, and Paul is going to be saying a few words a little bit later in answer to one of the questions that we've had in. And Paul is helping us really get our act together on sustainability. We've been a bit late getting to that, I must admit. And it's only now that we're starting to be able to quantify how much greenhouse gas we're emitting. And that's quite a challenge, especially with 500 sheep and 600 cattle. Trying to calculate the greenhouse gas emissions from them is quite a challenge. I don't think we're quite there yet. We are with everything else, but the sheep and the cattle is still proving a little tricky. But Paul will tell us a little bit more about that. We said that last year that we would explore new approaches to tackling litter. It's an issue that's always comes up every public meeting. Someone asks us a question about litter. Someone usually suggests that if we put more litter bins or more signs, that would really help. I can tell you it doesn't really. In some places signs and litter bins help, but more often than not they don't. But we've decided that what we need to do is to bring the problem in-house, the litter collection and the cleansing. That will enable us to give it a much more scientific approach to it and really better understand the problem. What is this litter? Where is it coming from? Who's supplying it? Is it all picnic waste? Is it all, everyone typically says, it's all McDonald's. Well, I don't believe McDonald's. McDonald's actually are pretty good at litter picking. So we're going to bring that in-house and start to recruit our own litter, our own cleansing teams. And we will think we'll be able to respond quicker to it. We'll understand it better. We'll be able to run more campaigns with schools and families as well, because surely education is all part of the solution. Litter bins might be in some places, but we think education is probably the answer, if there is an answer. So don't worry, we're getting there. We're more than halfway now. So Debbie mentioned this. Thank you, Debbie, for mentioning this. We did last year tree planting. We said that we would look at that. Surprisingly, we've got a lot of trees in Milton Keynes. Of new trees. But we did. Rob, who's not here tonight, but Rob did a really good comprehensive review of all our 6,000 acres and he's found 2 really good spots for us to plant new plantations, new woodlands. One of them at Middleton, which is a very, very interesting bit of public open space that probably many of us never thought of as a park. We thought of it as a bit of background landscape, but it's a big area. And so we did a wonderful first phase of tree planting there, 35,000, and you can see Countess Howe helped us there. One of your first first jobs, wasn't it? Yeah. So, and we've made that part of the Queen's Green Canopy, a Platinum Jubilee project. We also, last year, planted 400 oak saplings in our ancient woodlands. I showed you that picture with the dead ash trees in it. So oak are going to replace a lot of our ash trees. Sorry, Spider, I shouldn't do that, should I? But we had 400 saplings that were grown from acorns that the public had collected from our woods and grown them in yoghurt pots, and then we've planted them out. So that's a brilliant scheme. I mean, really good scheme in terms of getting oak trees going, but also a really good scheme for getting kids and families out, you know, taking a real interest in their environment. So that's been absolutely marvellous. Now, number 7, we completed the big investment programme of phase 2 at Willow Lake. So magnificent new water sports and visitor centre and cafe there at Willow Lake, which comes with some public toilets, very important in the parks. I'm looking for the word that we also put in there, where we did an extra big toilet for seriously disabled people to use as well. Changing places, right? Changing places. So we stepped up and put one of those in there, and we need to do more of that in our parks as well. And we expanded the play area there. We've now got a fantastic, huge play area. I think the biggest in Milton Keynes is at Willow Lake. We got it wrong to start with, I must admit. It turned to mud within a few but we've solved all that now. We've put a surface down, and it works really well. And it's just fabulous. I was there last week to see, you know, the diversity of kids using that play area. And it's busy, you know, from dawn till dusk. Wonderful. It's a really good investment of the trust money. We continued the investment in Great Linford Manor Park. We put some wooden sheep in there, concrete cows and wooden sheep. Extremely popular, a really simple technique of encouraging people to explore bits of the park that they wouldn't have otherwise done so. Of course, same problem as at Willow Play area. The land around the sheep is all getting turned to mud, but we'll deal with that. But they are lovely and specially commissioned piece of public art. And we've got another year of investment there at Willow Lake. Well, we're finishing off that project, and then we're going to start on the almshouses. So we've just taken these over from the council with a clever deal that we did there, and we're going to put those back into good use because they're in a state, but we think we can restore them for a couple of £1 million. And we've found ways to do that. As well as our investments down at Willen in the cafe and toilets, we're getting that new cafe in at Thurston. Oh, we haven't got a picture of that, I remember now. So at Thurston Lake, we're putting in a really very nice big cafe along with an adventure golf course, and that's nearly ready to open. It's going to open in July. And we also hope to revisit our plans for a cafe in Campbell Park, which I think we unveiled a few years ago, but it never happened. We couldn't make it happen. I won't go into the details, but that all fell by the wayside. So we've got to go back to that because we badly need a new facility like that at the top end of Campbell Park, along with some additional parking and a big play area up there as well. And if we could do that, that will certainly make organising events in Campbell Park that much easier. So, green infrastructure planning, those are the words that we give to how do we work out where the new green stuff should be as the city expands. And last year we produced this publication. There are still some outside there, which we called Milton Keynes' Inspirational Landscapes, Now and Forever. And that really is gaining currency and has been so over the last year. it sets out our vision as to how the landscape and the green infrastructure of Milton Keynes could be extended as the city expands. We want to see that network spread ever further. It's not up to us to decide all that. That's the job of the local authority, but we're working closely with them, and that document, our vision, if you like, is a sort of complementary document to the council's own 2050 strategy. So we're really optimistic about that, and we're hoping that we'll be involved with the council as they plan the next stage of the city's growth. Who knows quite what mechanism or organisation might be put in place to make that happen, but we want to be playing a full part in that whole process. We'd also love to take on some of the council's landscape, and that's one regret I think I've got in leaving now, is that we've never quite managed to get there. We've talked to them a great deal about taking on Togwell Lake, Mount Farm Lake, Blue Lagoon, Railway Walk, those such places of green. In hindsight, should have come to the Trust in the first place, because they're much more like the Trust's landscape. But we've never quite yet managed to do it, have we, Michael? But we get close, and then something comes in the way. But we're going to have another go at that, and that will be a job for Victoria. Then final 2 points really. We wanted to do more on diversity and inclusion, and we have done quite a bit, but you wouldn't know it if you looked at our board, and you wouldn't know it if you looked at our staff. We really have not managed to make any great progress there. If you look at the people using the parks, wonderful diversity. If you look at the events that we have, wonderful diversity. So we've got another step to take there, and we are going to really be working hard at that. We have worked hard at the accessibility of our parks, and we've done a big audit of Campbell Park to look at how we could make it more accessible. And some of this comes down to making sure that we've got the right information on our website for people with mobility problems, for example, letting them know in advance of a visit to a park what it's likely to entail. So we've done a lot of work on that, and we're going to be rolling that out across all of our parks to make sure that they are accessible for everybody. And lastly, what did we say? We said we would invest in our staff and in our governance, and we've done that. We've got a big new staff training programme. We need to do more on that as well. We've had an independent governance review, as Zoe mentioned. Very positive outcome of that, which was reassuring, I think, for everybody, especially me. I was quite apprehensive about it, but the consultant that we employed said this is a well-governed organisation, which was the first words I read, which thank goodness for that. Zoe sigh of relief as well, wasn't it? And we have a really good attendance at all our board meetings. We've got a really good relationship between the staff and the trustees. We appointed 3 new trustees last year, and 3 trustees retired, so we're keeping the board fresh. Sam Crooks and Jenny Marklew retired, 2 councillors. They were replaced by Lauren Townsend and Robin Bradburn, 2 more councillors from the cabinet, which is a really good sign of the trust, the council's support for the trust. And then we've recruited Richard Smith, a new trustee, and Richard has replaced Janita, who was one of our trustees with a financial background, and Richard too has a financial background. So we've kept the board strong, we've kept growing, we've kept improving. Looking forward, we're going to do more of the same. It's always a bit difficult when people say, well, what are you going to do next year? And I have to say, we're going to do more of the same. That's what we're here to do. And I think that's what you want us all to, you will want us to do, is to do more of the same. Keep the parks looking good, organise events, get people out into the parks, tell people all about them, make sure people have a good time, make sure the parks are safe. All that stuff we're going to keep doing. No doubt there'll be other more sexy things come along as well, but that's essentially what we're going to do. and we're going to keep making the trust financially strong. And I think that these days that has to mean we're going to invest our assets wisely, but also responsibly and sustainably. A few years now, that's the wind turbine picture. So we have some investments in wind farms and the like, and at least half of our investments now are in what you would call sustainable funds. So we're moving in the right direction. We can't do it all at once, but we're proud of the direction that we are taking. Right. Last bit. So, as this is my last annual public meeting, I should just reflect on 19 years here. I did 19 years. John, who's with us, our first chair, he did 19 years. What is it about 19 years? We can't quite make 20, you know. But it's been a real privilege. It really has. It's been a wonderful experience. I've loved every minute of it. I really have. I haven't lost a lot of sleep, whether that is because I don't think deeply enough about it. I don't know, but I think it's largely because I've had such a good staff, such a good team to back me up. The first priority has always been to maintain the parks to a decent standard and not allow a backlog of remedial work to build up. And I've been so fortunate in having such a brilliant operations team. They've just got on with that work, and I haven't had to get involved. Funny enough, it's one of the bits of the job that I was sort of kind of qualified to do, but I didn't need to because we had such good operations people. So I've largely kept out of that and left that first to Ray Dark and then to Rob Reiki, and they've done a fantastic job. They've responded to changing times. I think our landscapes now are quite different to how they were 19 years ago when I arrived. That's not because I've been particularly directing it. The operation team have just responded to the changing needs and the changing needs of society, the changing ideas that people have, and changing species, for example. So that's necessitated a change to our landscape. Climate change has also necessitated a change to the way in which we do things as well, to a certain extent. We've really got on top of all that thinning work that we needed to do. Brian and his teams at the Development Corporation planted the trees so blooming close together, but quite right, because we needed to make an impact and get the landscape started. But we've had a massive thinning job to do. We've got on top of that at last. We've got on top of the work of trees along the boundaries next to houses. We've got 10,000 neighbours to our parks and our grid road corridors. So looking after those neighbours and the landscape on their boundaries has been absolutely crucial. Habitat creation has been a really big thing these last few years. And I'm really pleased to say we've got our hedges in good order. And we've got 5 miles of hedges. And they're all in good shape. But equally important as all this work has been to build the Trust's assets, because the Trust really wasn't on a firm financial footing right at the start. It was endowed with £20 million, but that was really never going to be enough to sustain the Trust forever, to do this job forever. So we really had to be quite innovative in trying to find ways in which we could grow that asset base to make sure that the Trust would be sustainable for the long term. And initially we really couldn't see how we would do that, especially whilst having to maintain the parks to a good standard and doing all the community engagement work that I felt we needed to do. But gradually it all came together. We got a lot of support from English Partnerships, which was still around in the early days, and then Milton Keynes Partnership as well. We got a lot of continued support from them. And we got into some really innovative property work, especially with Richard, one of our previous chairs, under his leadership. and the asset base has gradually grown every year, and now we're in a reasonably good financial position. I'm not allowed to say we're in a sustainable position yet, but we're getting there. We're in pretty good shape, I think. But we have challenging times ahead. You know, who knows quite what this next recession, are we in a recession? When we get into the next recession, who knows what impact that will have on our assets. So we really need to be in a strong financial position to cope with all the uncertainties that are just around the corner. People say, what are you most proud of? A lot of people have been asking me that these last couple of weeks. And it's very hard to single any one thing out. I think seeing how people really value their parks, especially in lockdown, that was absolutely wonderful to see all the spontaneous comments that we got on social media praising our parks. Lots of people stuck at home hadn't really explored their local surroundings, suddenly found that they got all these wonderful parks on their doorsteps. You know, that was really rewarding and lovely to see that people took great delight in that. So that's probably one of the proudest things. The extent to which the community makes such good use of our parks for events and for exercise and all the things that they do. Seeing the staff that we've recruited grow and flourish has been wonderful. The improvements at Willow Lake, the environmental education work I've been talking about, and the financial stability that now underpins the organisation. I'm proud of all those things. I would just like to finish by saying thank you to everyone who has supported me. A lot of you here tonight have been a really key part of the Trust's success over the years, both before I came and since. So thank you all ever so much for all your support. We can't do this without the goodwill of the people of Milton Keynes, and that has been wonderful to have that support all the way through. I've worked with some really great people. I've learnt such a lot. I've had such a lot of fun. And I'm now going to hand over to Victoria, who literally and metaphorically will take the reins. So Victoria, over to you and good luck.
Wow. Well, good evening. I'm going to try and do this without my specs, which is no mean feat. No, I did make sure it was in a decent point size. So, yeah, lovely to see so many people here tonight. Confirms what I already suspected, that you have such passion for the parks here in Milton Keynes and, of course, the Parks Trust. And this gathering, while it gives me the most enormous pleasure to meet and speak to most of you, I hope, although there is a great deal of you, that might take a little bit of time. But I'm sure over the course of the years that I will take over from David, I will get to meet many of you. So I'm Victoria Miles, often introduced as the new David. But I am a person in my own right, and I'm in the absolute privileged position to be taking over as CEO of the Parks Trust. And I thought long and hard about what to write about this speech tonight, because I don't want to talk too much. So I thought I would tell you a little bit about the last few weeks of handover that I've had with David. He's done a remarkable job of sharing 19 years of knowledge and experience with me, and it's been an eclectic mix of insights and highlights, including, which you'll have seen on social media, I'm sure, and moth caterpillars eating the leaves from the cherry trees. Fascinating sight to behold. Property development, obviously providing that sustainable future for the Trust. The land management, the protection of the green space for future use. The public art in our parks that I really didn't know that much about, if I'm honest. And a coffee morning, which was super, with our committed volunteers doing fantastic work, which we saw earlier. And meeting the cattle and the sheep, which was really exciting at the farm. So that was very good. and attending those community events, which of course are very special at the Rose, including the unveiling of the Black Lives Matter pillar and the successful Jubilee celebrations. So all in all, as I say, a really eclectic mix. And inspirational visits to some of the most wonderful spaces MK has on its doorstep. Aren't you lucky? Such as the Linford Lakes Nature Reserves and the floodplain forest. And I've actually been on a scooter ride with the trustees to Middleton and Oak Grove, I kid you not. But the highlight actually must have been last night to the sewage works on one of the hottest days of the year to look at a compound. So that was a real highlight for me. Memorable. So I'm 6 weeks in and I've only just scratched the surface. I'm well aware of that. So having worked in community foundations, both here in Milton Keynes and Northamptonshire for the past 20 odd years, the stewardship of community assets has always been at the forefront of the work that I've been involved with. And I truly believe in the protection of those assets that remain forever, whether that's protected green space or funds for place-based giving, all for the absolute betterment of the places where we live, work and play. The Parks Trust is an outstanding example of this stewardship model, a unique, innovative and independent charity, a success story for Milton Keynes, caring for your parks, woodlands and lakes forever. And what has been extra special, I think, in the last few weeks is the knowledge, passion and the creativity within a really hard-working staff team. There's a strong culture of togetherness, a professionalism that ripples through the whole organisation. And this event today, well, it didn't happen by magic, as I'm sure you can agree. A lot of hard work and planning from all of the team. And I thank them wholeheartedly for pulling it together today and just for making it look so easy. I'm looking forward to working closely with them, our Board of Trustees, and of course working in partnership with others who are engaged with our work now and of course in the future, to continue the legacy that has been so inspirationally built by David and his team. So I have to crack on with that cafe at Campbell Park and do some other wonderful things as well. So I suppose it's watch this space. I'm going to wish David a long and happy retirement. I've loved the last few weeks because we've had a chief exec job can be quite lonely, and it's been quite a nice job share really, David. We've had a giggle and we have been out and about a lot. So I'm going to try and not to call him too much and ask too many questions. I've got a good team to do that, but I'm sure we'll meet in the pub every now and again for a pint and a glass of wine. But yes, so I look forward to working with you all. It's lovely to be here, lovely to see so many of you, and that's me. Thank you.
Thanks very much to both David and Victoria. It's back to me again now. I just wanted to share with you 2 pieces of footage that we've recently filmed. The reason why we've done this is because of we wanted to really help raise awareness of the breadth of our work and to get across and reach as many residents as possible in Milton Keynes so that they can engage with their parkland and the activities and events that we put on within it. So our work is very wide-ranging and it is entirely funded by income that we generate ourselves, as you've heard this evening. But many people still don't realise that it is a charity that care for their green spaces and deliver their outdoor learning sessions to their schools and help bring the community together at over 500 events a year. So what we decided to do was to help with that by really collecting some important video and images for people to see and bring that to life in their own homes. So I've got 2 pieces to show you. One is more of a stakeholder video, so for people that interact regularly with the Parks Trust. It's a 2-minute film, and then as I mentioned earlier, you'll get to see a little sneak preview of some TV advertising that we will be running from next week. TV's become a great method for us. It's much more affordable now because of the likes of the on-demand services. So we can use Sky, ITV Hub and more to reach people in the comfort of their own homes and encourage them out into their local green spaces. So first off, I'll I'll be showing the 2-minute video.
Milton Keynes is a special place where beautiful, connected landscapes surround us everywhere. Unlike most independent, self-financing charities, the Parks Trust. We protect the vision of Milton Keynes founders that local green spaces will never be compromised. Since 1992, our team of experts and committed volunteers have cared for over 6,000 acres of outdoor space that are enjoyed by residents, businesses, and visitors. From landscaping, caring for wildlife, and picking up litter, to outdoor learning, maintaining play areas, and offering over 500 community events annually. We make sure the parks are at their best, come rain or shine. It costs us around £10 million a year to make this happen, and we raise that money ourselves through income from property and investments. As Milton Keynes grows, so does the work of the Parks Trust as we take on more green spaces around the city. Trust us to keep communities connected and provide outdoor spaces to love forever. Milton Keynes with the Parks Trust.
Our 30-second TV commercial, which will air from next week.
Trust us. We're the charity that cares for the parks, woodlands and lakes of Milton Keynes. Beautiful spaces where everyone can breathe, play and make memories. Trust us to keep tails wagging and hearts pumping. Trust us to educate the little ones, and the big ones too. Trust us to keep the bees buzzing and the wildflowers blooming. Trust us to keep communities connected and provide outdoor spaces to love forever. Discover your local parks in Milton Keynes with the Parks Trust.
So we hope you enjoy seeing that from next week. Thank you. So that concludes the main sort of sections of the speakers for the meeting, and now we're going to move on to the questions section. We did actually ask in advance for people to send in their questions to us, so I'll gather a few of those together first and come back to you with some answers from our special members of our team that are here on hand to answer, and then we'll open out to the audience. So first of all, we've had a few questions that relate to our use of glyphosate and also our mowing schedules, particularly in relation to the grid roads and redways. So Frank, our operations manager, is going to just come up and say a few words to you about those areas.
Hello everybody. Yeah, just going to sort of start on the glyphosate question. Yeah, it's a product we use. We are looking to reduce the use of it. Over recent years, we have actually reduced the use of it by about a third across our whole estate. We do use it in a very targeted way though, using it around areas such as manholes, around trees, base of trees, keeping shrub beds weed free as well. Things like manholes, if we didn't do that, then we'd have issues where we'd have mowers potentially damaging machines. Around base of trees, it's very important when we're establishing trees to be able to keep that weed free. If we don't, then you'd be strimming around the base of the trees and you'd be getting the damage, and then those trees wouldn't be able to mature. We are continuing to look into alternatives. Currently not found any viable alternatives, but we are looking at different ways in some of the areas that we manage. So, for example, in the Western Expansion area in White House and Fairfield, we have started using mulch on the shrub beds and only doing hand weeding only. Now that's very expensive, and it's again a targeted way. We can't do that everywhere all over the whole estate, else it would cost a lot of money. Poplar plantation as well, south of Willow Lake, to remove the weed spraying around the mature trees there, but actually hopefully trimming around those, because they're mature trees, they're less likely to get damage around them. So we are looking and trying alternative ways. Product is licensed in the UK, goes through a very strict approval process in the UK and Europe, and obviously when used correctly with the right PPE, we believe it is safe. Moving on to about a question around the long grass and grass cutting regimes, and it was mainly sort of based around grid road maintenance along redways. One thing to say first is Milton Keynes Council actually maintain the central reservations, the roundabouts, and generally the first 5 metres from the verge, and then we maintain everything else back from there, and obviously in the parks. Interestingly, over the last 10 years, we have been doing a lot of work on increasing the long grass lengths. So back in 2011, 30% of our land was managed as long grass regimes, and in 2021 that's gone up to 60%. So we are working on that, but long grass has to be in the right place. If you don't have it in the right place, you have issues such as sightline issues. The grass gets cut, drops down into the gutters, into the drains, and causes issues there, and litter as well gathers within it. What we're trying to create is a mosaic of different grass lengths, some long, some short, some in between, and Campbell Park's a great example of that, with the meadow that we just cut as hay earlier in the week, and you've got the short grass here within the cricket pitch, the formal gardens, providing that amenity area. And also different lengths give different habitats. Some species like long grass, some species like short grass. Things like you've got daisies, clover within the short grass, and they're great nectar source. And again, things like green woodpeckers, starlings love the short grass. Again, we're always looking to improve areas. When new areas come over to us, or when we respec a 6-year contract, we're always looking to see if we can improve the grass lengths or improve the habitat for the different areas.
Thank you, Frank. We're now just going to move on to a question which relates to the climate emergency. We did have a number of questions on that theme. We've got one very specific question which Dave is going to answer, and then we'll be inviting up our Sustainability Manager, Paul Arnold, to say a few words about our sustainability policy. So the question that's specific that David will be taking is, given that the Parks Trust performs a vital role in safeguarding the land and the environment for future generations, will it be updating its policies to take as clear a stance on the climate emergency? For example, the policy around land acquisition and disposal hasn't been updated since 2010 and makes no mention of it.
Okay, fair cop. Yeah, we are going to update those policies. The land disposal policy was actually updated in 2020, but we failed to put it on the website. So what was on the website was the old policy. So we've got a new policy on there, or the updated policy from 2020 now. The land acquisition and disposal policy is a really important policy because every year we are asked by somebody to give up a bit of land. We've just had a request from a major manufacturer in Milton Keynes. They need a little bit of extra space for their big lorries. Could we spare a bit of space? Well, we've got to have a way of dealing with that. So we've got this policy that really forces us into a whole set of considerations. With a little bit of land to enable that business to operate better, and that policy has been updated, so it now includes consideration of ecosystem services provided by any area of land, the that relate to mitigating climate change, such as flood control and water management. So we have kind of moved with the times and brought that all up to date. We also reviewed this year and strengthened our environmental policy. It's now much more focused and targeted. It has targets within it that we say we are going to achieve, and the board are going to want to review how we're doing against those. And one of the outcomes of this renewed policy is the employment of Paul, our first sustainability manager. So we're going to ask Paul to speak now. Where is he? Where is Paul? Here we are, Paul.
Paul, would you mind coming up to the lectern just for a live stream?
Okay.
Hello everybody, I'm Paul Arnold, Sustainability Manager. I'm going to talk to you a bit about sustainability and what we've been doing. So we have an environmental policy that has been updated, and that includes a carbon section as well as an energy section. The carbon section itself is made up of 3 parts. The first part is about how we measure. So we're going to be very data driven going forwards. So we're looking at our scope 1 and scope 2 emissions across all of our operations. Part 2 is looking at how our habitats and our surroundings actually sequester and store carbon. So that's quite an undertaking technically, but we believe we've found a method for doing that. And those two things provide a bit of an equation, and they give us what our target would be, our footprint, and our target is carbon neutrality by 2030. We need to do a bit of work around understanding our emissions, especially, as David said, around the agricultural part of our operations. But we have again a technique. Ultimately, we're not going to necessarily announce what our footprint is until we've had it rigorously assessed. So we're going to go out to market and look for an external verifier, an accredited body, someone like the Carbon Trust, for instance. Might not be them, but they actually give us some really some certainty about our methodology, and also reassure everybody in the audience here that actually what we've been doing is above board and actually is comparable across other sectors. What we have done the past year, just to give you a reassurance, even though the climate emergency seems overwhelming at times, there's actually a lot of positive things we can do, and the past year has shown that. We've undertaken a real dive into our data to make sure we're centralising it and ensuring that it's vigorous and we can actually analyse it and trend. We've brought it in electric vehicles, so you may have seen in the car park the partnership with Volkswagen, so we're rolling that out more increasingly. And also Octopus Energy as well for our staff members, if they want to actually purchase an electric vehicle themselves, there's a scheme in place for that. We've actually had a partnership with Milton Keynes Council to take on some e-cargo bikes for our rangers. So actually it's really decarbonising the infrastructure part of our operation, so the transport part. But also, other than that, a bit of a legacy from lockdown and the pandemic. We've got introduced flexible working, which we're maintaining, which actually means that if you're not required to actually be in the office and you're not required to be out on the parks as part of a core part of your role, then that flexibility is there for work-life balance, but the benefit is, well, we're reducing transport into work, which is also really important. And ultimately, all of this is with a view to move forwards, and in the future we've actually got lots of good plans ahead of ourselves. So we're in the process of reviewing all of our policies and procedures and really embedding sustainability within them, and we've set up a sustainability working group internally across all of our operations and the landscape maintenance to really ensure that what the industries that they're part of can provide. That includes looking at investments and the technology we use. Decarbonising our fleet is a big part of that, especially looking at technologies around agriculture and reducing the dependence on fuel use. So some of those technologies aren't necessarily available right now, but we're looking at innovative ways of reducing that. Other than that, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to really say today. So there's going to be lots of exciting things to talk about in the future on this topic, and I look forward to speaking to you after the meeting, if you've got any further questions.
Thank you, Paul. The next question we have is about litter, and myself and my colleague James Cairncross will answer this one jointly. So the question was, how can it be better dealt with generally, and why don't we have more signs about keeping dogs on leads and picking up dog mess? Could we have fenced off areas for dogs to run free in all parks? So David did part answer that in his words earlier. Litter does continue to be a huge problem. It costs us over £400,000 a year to deal with. And we do really need park visitors to get on board and please take their litter home where there are no bins provided. As David said, the answer isn't to just keep providing more and more bins, but we have now taken the problem in-house, which James is going to talk a little bit about. We also do a lot of work with the local community, and we hugely appreciate the support and help from community groups and, of course, our team of volunteers. Last year we also had 7 corporate group litter picks and 5 community group litter picks, and that programme is building all the time, which is brilliant. And we're doing lots of work within our education programme as well with schools to help them to understand the issues of litter and how to help combat them. We do have signage in place in areas where dogs must be kept on leads, and in other areas of Parkland dogs are free to be off the lead, but obviously we do ask owners to keep their common sense judgment really as to where it might be appropriate to have them on. The idea of having fenced off areas for dogs to be able to run free is a nice one, and it has cropped up in the past, so we will take that suggestion on board going forward. And James will just say a few words about our new litter cleansing team.
Hi there. So David mentions that we're going to take our litter cleansing team in-house, and we've actually got the manager appointed, and he's starting on Monday to get cracking with that. We're doing that for 2 reasons. The first is really well most of the time. I hope you agree the parks are generally quite clean of litter. Supporting them is also our team of community rangers, other staff, volunteers. I'm sure I've seen David collecting some litter in the car park here of the morning. The problem arises when we get an unseasonably warm weekend perhaps, and we turn up on the Monday morning and it looks like a bomb has gone off in the park. We've got contractors working with staff all over the city. Now we don't have any control over where those contractors work, and in one contract there may be no problem. And their staff can't be shifted across to a different contract, of course. So by taking it in-house, we've got full control over where those people go, so we can target those bombshell weekends that come in. The other reason is so that we can start to generate some data to feed into Paul's work. So we're likely to get some computer system where we can start importing all of our waste tickets and really driving some data to give Paul something to do for his first year. Back to Hannah.
Thanks, James. I'm actually going to ask you to stay though, because we do have another question related to yourself, which is about the work at Great Linford Manor Park. So somebody asked about when will the works be completed?
Yep, me again. So the works at Great Linford. I stood at this meeting last year and explained how it was nearly finished and it would be done by the late autumn. And then we had the pingdemic. Does everyone remember that? At the later part of the year. If you work in the construction industry or something similar, you'll know that there was a massive problem with availability of materials early on in the year, and that hit the project. It was mainly the carved stone that we needed to finish off some of the features. So we decided to let the contractor go off to another site for the winter and brought them back. They've been back on site now for a few weeks. They're working on the spring head, just finishing that off at the main pond. I don't want to over-egg this. The park does look amazing, so if you've not been there recently or at all of Milton Keynes' parks. We had another question that went with that about an area that looks a bit messy, which is referring to the area just in front of where the sheep were that David showed on the slide earlier. That's an area where we've chosen to let the grass grow a bit longer. We've cut some short grass paths through it in areas where people want to walk. And if you visit from the canal bridge, those sheep are framed at the end of a long mown grass path. It looks brilliant. It's a real welcome to the park. But the aim there is really to interpret the different type of regimes that would have been there historically. There was a ha-ha line midway through that piece of landscape, and on the house side that would have been manicured short grass. The other side of the ha-ha, which was a sunken wall hidden into the ground. There would have been cattle grazing or a deer park perhaps, we don't quite know, but that would have been much more of a productive landscape, and it's an area that we're calling the wood pasture, to just interpret that historic use of it. So that's the reason for the sheep. We didn't just fancy bringing in the wooden sheep to complement the concrete cows. They're there to just interpret that historic use of the park, and you can go and sit on them as well if you want, or your kids can. And the other question was, are we going to have a dipping platform? There was a plan to having a dipping platform on one of the lesser known ponds in the park. In between planning that and coming to build it, the pond just entirely dried up, so we thought that would be a bit of a own goal to build that. A bit embarrassing, so we removed that from the scheme. However, just across the road we've got Linford Lakes Nature Reserve, so massive resource for that type of activity with school groups or kids. Am I done?
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Thanks, James. We're going to take one more pre-asked question, and then I'll open up to everyone here to feel free to put your questions to us. So the final question, which will be answered by David of those sent in advance, is what is the time frame for your plan to link the linear parks as biodiversity-rich corridors to your existing nature reserves? For example, Loughton Valley Park from Loughton Green northwards to the Dunsteed Way flyover.
I have to say, I don't really understand the question. To link our parks are all linked together. I think the important thing that we need to do within our parks is to link them ecologically, so that you've got habitat types that run all the way through the parks. I think that's probably what's meant by the question, but I'm a bit of a loss to know. We already have this wonderful green network. We have got some gaps in our network, some missing links, if you like, and I've been telling Victoria all about those and said, you know, on your long-term list of things to do, we ought to try and acquire that bit of land and that bit of land to plug these missing links in the park network. But as for that particular area, I think they're already linked. Oh, here is the questioner. Hold on, wait for the microphone.
Yeah, so I asked that question. It was actually your head of environment that actually said that at one of his presentations at our Loughton Residents Association, and I thought it was very good because that's what I've been lobbying for over a year now, to make the linear parks more biodiverse, because they're mowed repeatedly very often, and the grass is just very short and just green, no butterflies.
Yes, so that's the gist of the question, is really about the long grass and the mowing of the grass in the parks, and could we have long stretches of long grass. But weren't you the lady that wrote the nice letter and sent photographs complimenting us on our lovely long grass? Yeah?
I was, but that was part of it, so that's the first step. But there's still miles and miles of just short green grass.
We've got more to do.
Yeah,
well, we take that point, and we will work on it. You can see from James's other point, though, that sometimes we get letters from people saying, you've let the grass grow long and it's all terribly scruffy. So we are trying to get a balancing act. We have now got 60% of our grass is long, whereas it was 30% a few years ago. So we are getting there, but we will do more, and we will seek to do more. But we do need that mixture of diversity of habitat, you know, some short, some long, some intermediate. But I take the point, and we'll look at that area in particular.
Kind of allows the life to develop, whereas if it's long all the time, it can suppress the plants which are growing.
Absolutely, yeah. There is a lot to it, as you say.
What I really find disturbing is you get quite commonly lots of very interesting wildflowers. I mean, especially bee orchids. You can see hundreds of bee orchids, and I've seen kind of masses of bee orchids, and then I take my wife to him, and she said, "Oh, that's fantastic." And then the next day I go along, and that's been mowed out. And that this is it because you do mowing in June, which is precisely the wrong time to do the mowing for that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I take the point. It's a very complex
whereas you actually did scrub clearance in October, which meant the next year there was orchids which had been suppressed for 2 years, but suddenly started sprouting up again. So it's
okay,
not just a simple thing.
All right. Well, we take the point. We are informed by, in some of our work anyway, by an ecology advisory group with some real expert ecologists on there, including people from the Open University. And I know they are looking at all this and giving us more advice. So we're going to try and do better, and hopefully someone stood here next year will give you a proper account of it. I'm afraid our head of environment is ill in bed with COVID at the moment, otherwise he'd be here facing the music. So sorry about that, but you'll have Phil next year, and we'll see if we can do better. Okay. Lots of bee orchids at Stone Pit Field, Katie says. Yeah. They do crop up in the most unusual places, roundabouts and included. Yeah.
So yeah, we'll just open out to any other questions from the audience.
What you intend to do about the car parking situation along Columbia Place leading into Campbell Park? Every event that we have in Campbell Park, they park on the curbs, they park in Henrietta Way, they park down Columbia Place, they've got footpaths. Is it not possible to take home the theatre car park for your events? I know they're not always run by you, but it would be nice if there's some sort of parking facility available for these events, so it doesn't impact the residents of Campbell Park.
Yeah, no,
and parking people to come down at weekends to manage it.
Yeah, we do take on board those comments. Obviously, with the diversity of events we now have in the park and more commercial acts coming in, it has brought with it larger visitor numbers. We are hosting a residents' evening. My colleague Julie Dawes is available this evening to speak to residents as well, but we will invite people in to talk about the issue, what we can do about it, what our longer term plans might be. In the medium term, we have brought solutions in like chain and cone to help to go down the verges, so we can stop people doing that bumper to bumper parking in inappropriate places. We're also working with event organisers to get out better information prior to people coming to the area. I think some of it is particularly where people don't live in the area and are coming for larger acts. It's trying to help educate where all the nearest car parking is. There is a tendency to come straight to the venue rather than to be aware of that there is a lot of city centre parking available as well, within easy reach of the park. So that is something we are keen to work with residents on, and we will be looking into different ways to manage that going forward, and particularly, as I say, working very closely with the event organisers of the commercial acts going forward.
The other thing I would like to say is, can we have a cycle path at Willow Lake, please? Because the amount of times that kids need to get run over by bikes or go-karts or just scooters is quite bad in front of the pub.
It is very busy. Yeah, we do know we've got a very diverse mix of user groups wanting to use for different reasons, be it running, cycling and children's activities. We are doing more work on development for Willow Lake, so we will take those ideas on board and see what we can do to help ease the traffic a bit better around there. Thank you.
Disabled access. 3 years ago I had a chat to David, because I posted a few items on Facebook, and I was pleasantly surprised at how quickly Parks Trust responded. Said, could David give me a call, which he did. I'd like to be able to give disabled feedback, and he said, yeah, that would be a good idea. And I met Colin, your parks manager, fantastic chap. He photographed loads of obstacles, got them all sorted out. It's a shame he's leaving because he's good, very good. What I'd like is to be able to give feedback, because when I do phone up, people tend to respond with, "Oh, we're dealing with Centre for Integrated Living," which
I haven't set it up.
they do a great job, but they're a different animal to me. I'm a sports wheelchair user, so they won't be going cross country with me and struggling on slopes where you've got a gate. If you could have just flattened that bit of land out so I could get the gate open, and then paths which are all on a camber. You have some where you've curved them, which is fantastic. And those black recycled, is it tyres?
Yes.
Whatever they are, they're fantastic. I'd love to see more of them, because at Great Linford I was not too chuffed with the new paths there. They clogged up my tread, my push rims, my front wheel, and my daughter's buggy. So both a buggy and me, it was just mess, that new sandy yellow pathway. And if you want any advice from a disabled wheelchair user, you can have it for free.
Yeah, we really welcome your feedback. I'll come to Ernie in a second, but yeah, we very much welcome your feedback. It is important to us to look at all user groups and all levels of mobility. Working with Ernie from Centre for Integrated Living was to put our efforts into auditing parks at the moment one by one. So we took a case study of Campbell Park and did a full audit that looks at many different things, such as the gradients, which is obviously very key, and path surfacing as well. So that's covered off in there. Campbell Park, we do have a number of other big projects, and our plan is to develop a new master plan which will incorporate those feedback points on accessibility into it. Because that's a bigger programme of work, in the meantime we're going to take another park, we think probably Thurston Lake, and audit there. So perhaps that could be something we could get yourself involved with, because that would be a really good opportunity to get all of the feedback coordinated. I will hand over to Ernie just to add any points you'd like to put in there from Centre for Integrated.
Now this is all off the cuff. Yes, Tony, we'd love to have you doing things. What we're thinking about on Centre for Integrated that when somebody raises something, we've got somebody to go and have a look at it, but also they can go and look and find the problems before we start, so that they can all be identified. And until you know the problems, you can't solve them. So, yes, let Hannah know for the parks. If you've got anything else anywhere, let us know. If it's drop curbs in the city centre somewhere or anywhere else in Milton Keynes, let us know. We'll raise it to the appropriate cabinet member, if nothing else. Won't guarantee you get anything done, but we'll raise it.
Thank you.
John Best, I love Great Linford Manor Park. I think you've done a tremendous job, rightly described as the jewel in the Parks Trust crown. It's also the jewel in the crown of the Grand Union Canal, and I would be remiss not to congratulate the Parks Trust for the support they've given to the waterway and activity along the waterway, and particularly David's personal support for the community boat Electra, which has opened up all sorts of opportunities linking to the park. And I'm pleased and proud to have a good working relationship with the Parks Trust, where their land adjoins the Grand Union. But I certainly want to help in what we do about less enlightened and more recalcitrant landowners that don't have necessarily the same responsible approach to landscaping that the Parks Trust has. So thank you very much, Parks Trust, for being very waterway friendly.
Welcome. Thank you. Thanks, John. Do we have any other questions? Thank you very much. I know just to end the questions section, first Chief Executive of the Parks Trust is here this evening, Brian Salter, and I believe Brian would like to say a few words. I Can't spot you, Brian. Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me? Do I join on my
We'll get you a microphone.
In no way do I want to take the limelight off the achievements of David in the last 30 years. They are stupendous. But we do have to recognise that his 19 years represent part of the 30 years that the Parks Trust has been around. And I think at this public meeting I should make reference to the establishment of the Parks Trust. It was in July 1991 that John Duggan held the first meeting of the Parks Trust in order to explore the possibility of setting up this self-funding charity. Now, the rest is history, but there are a number of people invited here tonight to celebrate the 30 years that can't be here.